Shout at me again, and I'll end you." The words left my mouth before my brain could stop them. The entire restaurant went silent. Every fork stopped midway to every mouth. Every conversation died. And the man sitting in front of me, the man whose dark eyes had been burning holes through every server in this place for the past 2 hours, just stared at me. His name was Vincent Falcone. I didn't know that then. All I knew was that he was rude, entitled, and had made my already terrible night absolutely unbearable. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you how I threatened a mafia boss in front of his entire family and somehow lived to tell the tale, let me ask you something. Have you ever been pushed so far, so hard that something inside you just breaks? Not in a sad way, but in a way that makes you realize you've got nothing left to lose. That's where I was that night. That's the moment everything changed. Hey, how are you doing? Wherever you are right now, whatever you're doing, I hope you're comfortable, because this story is going to take you on a journey. I'm talking about the kind of story that proves sometimes the worst moments of your life are actually the doorway to the best ones. Sometimes the person who seems like your enemy is actually your salvation. And sometimes when you're at your absolute lowest, that's exactly when life decides to hand you something extraordinary. My name is Rebecca Hayes. This is the story of how I went from being a broke, exhausted single mother working double shifts just to keep my daughter alive to becoming the woman who somehow captured the heart of one of the most dangerous men in the city. The story of how one moment of pure, unfiltered rage changed absolutely everything. If you enjoy stories about underdogs, about real people facing impossible situations, about love finding you in the strangest places, then do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Are you cozy at home? On a lunch break? Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. But let me start from the beginning. I was 27 years old when this happened. 27, and already feeling like I'd lived 3 lifetimes. I believed in hard work. I believed that if you kept your head down, did your job, and pushed through the exhaustion, things would eventually get better. I believed that good people who worked hard would be rewarded. That effort mattered. That dignity came from doing your best, no matter how hard things got. Looking back now, I was naive. Not stupid, just naive. There's a difference. I'd been working at Carmichael's restaurant for 3 years. It wasn't fancy, but it wasn't a dive either. Upper middle-class clientele, decent tips on good nights. Management that mostly left you alone if you did your job. I worked as many shifts as they'd give me. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, didn't matter. I took every single one. The reason was simple. My daughter Emma was 8 years old and had been in and out of hospital since she was 5. Leukemia. The word still makes my stomach turn. The treatments were working. The doctor said she was responding well. But responding well costs money. So much money. Even with insurance, the bills were drowning me. Deductible medicist. Every time I thought I was getting ahead, another bill would arrive. Emma's father left when she was 2, long before the diagnosis. I hadn't heard from him in years. It was just me and her against the world, and I was losing. The night I met Vincent Falcone, I'd been awake for almost 20 hours. I'd worked the breakfast shift, gone to the hospital to sit with Emma during her afternoon treatment, then come back for the dinner shift. My feet ached, my back ached, everything ached. But Emma had smiled at me that afternoon, really smiled, and told me about a dream she'd had about going to the beach. We'd never been to the beach. Couldn't afford it. But she described it like she'd been there 1,000 times. I was running on that smile and 3 cups of bad coffee. Vincent and his family came in at 7:30. Party of 8. They got seated in my section. I remember approaching the table and noticing him immediately. Not because he was handsome, though he was dark hair, strong jaw, expensive suit, but because of the way everyone else at the table deferred to him. He sat at the head, and the others arranged themselves around him like planets around the sun. "Good evening," I said, pulling out my notepad. "Welcome to Carmichael's. Can I start you folks off with some drinks?" He didn't look at me, just started rattling off orders. "Scotch neat. She'll have white wine. He'll have bourbon water for the kid. Not please. Not even eye contact. Just commands." I wrote it down. I dealt with rude customers before. You smile. You nod. You get through it. I brought the drinks. He took a scotch without a word of thanks. When I asked if they were ready to order, he waved me away like I was a fly. 15 minutes later, he snapped his fingers at me. Actually snapped them. He walked over. "Yes, sir. We're ready now. I took their orders. Vincent changed his mind 3 times, finally settling on the ribeye, medium rare, with a side of arrogant condescension. When I brought the food, that's when things started going wrong. I set his plate in front of him. Ribeye, medium rare, exactly as ordered. He cut into it, took one look, and pushed the plate away. I ordered medium. My stomach dropped. Sir, I have it written here as medium rare. I said medium. Take it back. I looked at the steak. It was perfect medium rare. Pink center, warm throughout. Exactly what he'd ordered. But arguing with customers was a firing offense. Of course, sir. I'll have them make you a new one. My manager, Marcus, had to come over and apologize. I could see the frustration in his eyes, but he smiled and promised to make it right. The kitchen staff gave me looks when I brought it back. They knew. They always knew. The new steak came out. Medium. Vincent cut into it and ate without comment. No apology for the mistake. No acknowledgement that I'd been right. When his family ordered dessert, I brought it promptly. He didn't say thank you. Not once. The entire meal. I was tired. So tired. My phone had buzzed twice with messages from the hospital. Just routine updates, but every buzz made my heart jump. I was thinking about Emma, about her pale face, about how I needed to pick up her prescription tomorrow and wasn't sure if my card would go through. That's when he called me over again. He didn't even use my name, though. I was wearing a name tag. Bring me an espresso and make sure it's actually hot this time. Like I'd messed something up before. I hadn't. Right away, sir. I said, voice tight. I put the order in. The espresso machine was running slow. It took an extra 2 minutes. I was walking toward his table, cup in hand, when he shouted across the restaurant, "Sometime today would be nice." People turned. My coworkers looked over. His family shifted uncomfortably. Something in me cracked, not broke, cracked. I reached the table, set down the espresso with a hand that was starting to shake. Not from fear, from rage. Will there be anything else? I asked. He didn't look up. Next time, move faster. I don't have all night. The crack widened. I turned to walk away. And get me some cream. Now, that's when it happened. That's when 7 years of struggling alone, 3 years of watching my daughter suffer, 20 hours without sleep, and 2 hours of being treated like garbage, all collided into one perfect moment of clarity. I turned back around, and I said the words that changed my life. The silence that followed my words was deafening. I stood there, tray still in my hand, looking down at this man who had spent 2 hours making my life miserable, and he was looking right back at me with an expression I couldn't read. His family was frozen. The woman to his left, elegant with perfectly styled blonde hair, had her wine glass halfway to her lips. The older man across from him had stopped chewing. A younger guy, who looked like he might be Vincent's brother, was staring at me like I just pulled out a weapon. Maybe I had, just not the kind they were used to. Vincent's face was completely blank for about 3 seconds. Then slowly, the corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, something darker, more interested. What did you just say to me? His voice was quiet. That should have terrified me. Instead, the exhaustion and rage that had been building for months just poured out. You heard me, I said. I've been on my feet for 20 hours. I have served you perfectly all evening. You've been rude to me, to my co-workers, and you've acted like we're beneath you. I brought you exactly what you ordered, exactly when you needed it, and you've treated me like dirt. So, yes, if you shout at me one more time, we're going to have a problem. My manager, Marcus, was speed-walking toward the table. I could see him in my peripheral vision, panic written all over his face. I didn't care anymore. I was already imagining the conversation. I'd be fired. Of course, I'd be fired. And then I'd figure something else out because I always figured something else out. Rebecca, Marcus's voice was strained. Perhaps you should take a break. Perhaps your server should learn her place. The blonde woman said, setting down her wine glass with a sharp click. Perhaps you should all learn some basic human decency. I shot back. The younger guy who looked like Vincent's brother actually laughed, then tried to cover it with a cough when Vincent glanced at him. Vincent stood up. He was tall, over 6 feet. I was 5 feet 5 inches on a good day. He looked down at me, and I looked right back up at him. What's your name? He asked. It's on my name tag. I want to hear you say it. He nodded slowly. Then he reached into his jacket pocket. I watched Marcus tense beside me, but Vincent just pulled out a wallet. He took out what looked like several hundred bills and placed them on the table. For the meal and the entertainment, he said. Then he looked at me again. You're either very brave or very stupid. You aren't fighting for yourself, Rebecca. You're fighting for her. He pushed a thick cream-colored envelope across the table. It was heavy. What is this? An offer. I need someone like you. Not a waitress, a manager, a fixer. I own 3 restaurants downtown, and frankly they are sloppy. They waste money. I need someone honest with a mind for profit and a real understanding of what makes a kitchen run efficiently. Someone who knows how to control the staff. He paused, letting the weight of the proposal sink in. I am offering you the position of regional hospitality manager. It comes with a salary of $150,000 a year and full unlimited benefits coverage for you and your family. The number hit me like a physical blow. $150,000 full benefits. It was enough to cover Emma's past and future bills and still leave us enough to live like normal people. It was the absolute irresistible offer that hooks the protagonist completely. I don't work for criminals, Vincent. Do you know where the $4,000 you spent on Emma's last treatment came from, Rebecca? He asked, not missing a beat. The hospital used Venture Holdings Group LLC to factor your outstanding invoices. Venture Holdings is a subsidiary of Felony Enterprises. You are already working for me. You just didn't know it. The evidence I should have seen but missed. The faceless cold corporation funding my daughter's health care was secretly linked to the man who is now offering me a job. The entire system was one massive trap. I was already indebted to him. This is blackmail. I whispered. No, this is an alliance and a job offer. He corrected, his tone chillingly calm. You sign this contract tonight, and the benefits kick in tomorrow. The back debt is handled. Emma's medical future is secure. You get a job where your effort is finally rewarded. He continued, his voice persuasive. The alternative, Rebecca, is that you walk away. I have no problem with that. But you go back to Carmichael where you'll be fired by the end of the week because you threatened the biggest customer they have. The bills keep piling up, and in 3 months you lose the apartment, and Emma loses access to the best care. The personal stakes had just expanded to affect my loved one in the most devastating way. He wasn't threatening me. He was threatening Emma's chances. I reached for the envelope. It contained a professional-look contract, a business card for an HR director, and a small folded pamphlet detailing the expansive medical benefits plan. It was all real. Why me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You could hire an MBA for this. Why the waitress who insulted you? He smiled the soft, genuine smile again. It was a dangerous form of attraction under pressure. Because I need someone who isn't afraid to shout. I need someone who is so dedicated to what she loves that she will end the world for it. My restaurants are full of people who are too scared to tell me the truth. You, Rebecca, you told me I was rude and that I should learn some decency. You don't know how valuable that is to me. He raised his glass slightly. You forced your way into my world. Now, let me show you what my world can do for you. I looked at the contract. I looked at the menu prices. I looked at the dark, powerful man across from me. Every action I took led to compounding problems. But this single choice was the only one that offered immediate total safety for Emma. I picked up the pen the waiter had left on the table. The decision was made the moment he mentioned Emma's debt. I need one thing in writing, I said, meeting his gaze. Name it. This job has nothing to do with any of your other things. I manage restaurants. I do not manage shipping containers. He gave a slow, deliberate nod. It's a clean operation, Rebecca. You have my word, and I always honor my word, especially to people who are under my protection. I signed the contract, the date, the salary, the benefits. The ink on the paper felt like a shackle, but also like the most beautiful promise I had ever held. I had given everything, my independence, my moral comfort, and my freedom from the felony world. I had traded it all for Emma's health. I was no longer just Rebecca Hayes, the struggling waitress. I was Rebecca Hayes, Vincent Falcone's newest manager and his most unexpected piece of collateral. The inciting catastrophe was complete. I was his. The moment the ink dried on the contract, the world outside the restaurant shifted. It wasn't just the relief of knowing Emma was safe. It was the strange, heavy silence that came with being under Vincent Falcone's protection. I had sold my soul for a clear conscience regarding my daughter. The very next morning, the change was undeniable. I went straight to the hospital. A meeting had already been set up with the hospital administrator, Mr. Thompson. He was usually stiff, untouchable, buried under piles of debt ledgers. But when I walked in, He was polite, almost deferential. "Ms. Hayes," he said, standing up. "It's a great relief. The full outstanding balance, including all projected copays for the next 6 months of Emma's treatment, has been settled by Felony Enterprises. We are now working directly with their benefits coordinator. Please accept my sincere apologies for any distress the previous invoicing may have caused." He apologized to me. The crushing weight that had been on my shoulders for 3 years simply lifted. This was the immediate reward, the initial irresistible lure of Vincent's world. That day, I sat with Emma, and for the first time in her life, I told her about the beach without feeling like a liar. We were going soon. My job as regional hospitality manager started 2 days later. Vincent didn't run a simple restaurant group. He ran 3 of the most high-end establishments in the city. A massive steakhouse, a trendy seafood place, and a classic Italian trattoria that was a well-known meeting spot for the city's power players. They were all profitable, but they were, as Vincent put it, sloppy. My first month was pure, exhausting immersion. I was running multiple tension threads simultaneously. Tension thread 1, professional pressure. I stripped the systems down to the bone. The head chef at the steakhouse was bleeding profits with excessive inventory orders. I streamlined the supply chain and introduced weekly waste audits. The seafood place was overstaffed and undermanaged. I cut shifts and implemented a performance-based bonus structure. I worked 18-hour days, but this exhaustion was different. It was productive. Within 3 weeks, I had cut operational costs by 25% across the board without sacrificing quality or staff morale. I was good at this, better than I had ever been at waiting tables. My skills, sharpened by years of budgeting on a razor edge, were perfectly suited for maximizing profit and efficiency. Vincent wasn't in the restaurants, but he was always watching. He received my daily reports. We met once a week, usually late, in a private office above the trattoria. These meetings were intense. He didn't compliment me. He just presented new problems. "The trattoria is losing $15,000 a month on linens," he said at our second meeting. "They're using a vendor who charges 40% above market rate. I found a vendor who handles 3 local hotels. We switch on Monday. Save $7,000 this month." "Good," he said, a small flicker of approval in his eyes. Next, tension thread 2. Emotional complication. Our relationship was strictly professional, yet intensely personal. The professional success was built entirely on the personal debt I owed him. I was constantly aware of the trap, but he never made a move. He never pressured me. He never referenced the dinner or my initial outburst. Vincent was charming that night. He didn't talk business. He asked about Emma, about my life before the dead, about my real dreams for a bakery. He was disarming, showing a vulnerability that was perfectly manufactured to make me drop my guard. "You really should open your own place, Rebecca," he said, refilling my water glass. "You have the touch, the talent." "I have a $90,000 debt and a full-time job," I reminded him gently. "My dreams are on hold." He smiled. "Not necessarily. I could fund the bakery tomorrow as a separate legitimate enterprise." A gift. The word gift chilled me. Gabriella's warning echoed in my mind. "I don't need gifts, Vincent. I need a clean slate, and you have it. You've earned it." He leaned across the table. His dark eyes were warm, focused only on me. This was the moment of complete vulnerability exchange. "I know this is complicated, Rebecca," he said, his voice dropping low. "I know how this started, but you should know I didn't fund your healthcare just to own you. I funded it because you were the first person who ever challenged me without wanting anything. And when I saw what you were fighting for, I decided I wanted to be the one who made sure you won." It felt genuine. It felt real. It felt like the truth I desperately wanted to believe. He was not just a mobster. He was a protector. My deepest character relationship with him, the one built on professional admiration and his unsettling generosity towards Emma, was solidifying. "What are you doing with Warehouse for?" I asked, throwing the question out like a grenade. I had to know. The Glenmorangie whiskey was still haunting my inventory spreadsheets. He didn't flinch. "I told you that's external logistics. I need to know the entire story, Vincent. I have risked everything for this job. I need to know that what I'm running is clean and that I'm not enabling something illegal." He paused a long, heavy silence. He put his knife and fork down slowly. "It's complicated, Rebecca, but I will tell you this. I am not just a restaurant owner. I am in the shipping business, the import business, and yes, the security business. I cut corners where I have to, but I am not dealing drugs, and I am not killing children. My business is protecting my family's legacy. It's just aggressive. And Warehouse 4, it's a holding facility. Nothing illegal runs through the restaurants. You have my word. I searched his face. His eyes were clear. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Dinner ended on that note of unresolved tension, leaving me with a fragile sense of security. I went home feeling dangerously close to trusting him. The next morning, everything shattered. I went to the Tradera early to check the morning receipts. I was sitting at a computer in the small glass-walled manager's office near the kitchen reviewing labor costs. I was alone, or so I thought. I know my efficiency reports are being used to launder money from illegal shipments. I'm not a criminal. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. The mask of charm was completely gone. This was the man who ran the north side of the city. Cold, dangerous. You are under contract, Rebecca, he said. The terms of your employment are explicit. You signed a 5-year agreement. That contract is null and void due to illegal activities. I can report you, and I will, he sighed. A sound of weary patience, as if I were a child who had misplaced a toy. If you report me, I will be inconvenienced for a short time. My lawyers are very good. You, on the other hand, will lose everything. He stood up, walking around the desk to stand directly in front of me. The isolation amplification technique was working. The office felt oppressively silent. Just the two of us and the truth. Let's review the facts, Rebecca, he said, his voice dropping low. You are broke. You owe an old debt to a company linked to me. Your daughter's life is only secure because of a $60,000 payment that came directly from my illegal operation. That money is traceable. If you open an investigation, the payment is flagged. It is seized. The hospital is forced to stop treatment until you can find legitimate funding. He wasn't threatening to hurt me. He was forcing me to choose between terrible options. The option to fight back meant choosing Emma's immediate health over my moral freedom. I'll pay it back, I whispered. I'll find another job. I'll take a loan. He laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. With what collateral? The house. You sign the lien over to Venture Holdings. If you default on your original $4,000 loan, which you still haven't paid back, by the way, the deed converts immediately. I own it. Felix has the papers ready. You lose your home, your security, and your ability to bring Emma home when she's better. This was the rock-bottom moment. The loss of my home and financial security justified by the terms of the initial predatory agreement. He was taking the house because I signed the papers. You said you wouldn't take the house if I took the job, I challenged, clinging to the only promise I thought I had. I said I could make the money or take the house. He corrected his expression neutral. You failed to make the money because you are quitting the job I gave you to pay off the debt. You are defaulting on the security I provided. Therefore, I must liquidate the asset. Basic business, Rebecca. You should appreciate the efficiency. He had twisted the transaction so expertly that my only possible escape route was sealed. The betrayal was complete. I walked out of that office in a daze. I tried to apply for other positions that day, a restaurant consultant job, a catering management position. I was instantly rejected. Vincent's network was fast and thorough. He hadn't just fired me. He had blacklisted me from every legitimate hospitality opportunity in the city. It contained all my original bakery plans, my perfected sourdough starter recipe, the secrets of my past. It was meaningless yet precious. That night, I drove to the hospital. I couldn't risk taking Emma back to the apartment, which was now legally Vincent's. I sat in the visitor's lounge watching the monitors, feeling utterly hopeless. I had one final desperate option, leave the city, but even that was impossible. Vincent knew my daughter's location. He controlled her care. He had built the cage with my daughter's life as the centerpiece. I had reached rock bottom. My complete devastation was complete. I was a criminal in debt, homeless, blacklisted, and tied by my daughter's illness to the very man who had engineered my collapse. I was no longer a victim. I was a hostage. I spent the night in the hospital visitor lounge. The exhaustion had passed, replaced by a cold, frightening clarity. I was homeless, blacklisted, and tied by an invisible chain to a crime boss who held the deed to my life in the form of Emma's medical security. I couldn't run, and I couldn't fight him conventionally. The sun came up, casting long pale shadows across the vinyl floor. I had to make a choice. The choice, stay broken and accept the narrative that Vincent had imposed on me, that I was a grateful recipient of his dark charity, a failure who needed his protection, or fight back and rewrite the entire story. Accepting his terms meant Emma was safe. But I was a prisoner, forever obligated to the money that bought her health. Fighting back meant risking the $60,000, risking Emma's care, and risking everything, but retaining my moral integrity and my freedom. I chose to fight, not in the courts, which he controlled, and not with the police, who would seize Emma's funds. I would fight him where he was weakest, in his own organization. He thought he owned me because he owned my desperation. He was wrong. My transformation catalyst arrived not in the form of a new relationship, but in the form of old loyalty. I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria nursing a lukewarm coffee when Sarah, Emma's nurse, and my only friend found me. She sat down, her face drawn with worry. "Marcus called me Rebecca," she said quietly. "He told me you quit, and then the Falcon Company sent a legal notice to your apartment. He said they took the house. Is it true?" I looked at the coffee, then at my friend. I couldn't lie to her, but I couldn't tell her the whole truth. "It's true," I admitted. "I left the job. It was too close to illegal operations. And yes, they used a predatory loan agreement to seize the apartment. Vincent Falcone did this. He owns me." Sarah gripped my hand. "That monster. After everything you did for him. He did it because he knew I had nothing left to lose. He thought he cornered me." Sarah was furious, but she was also a problem solver. "Okay, you can stay with me. My spare room is empty. But Rebecca, you need money and you need a lawyer. Even a cheap one. I need to make my own money, not borrow more," I said slowly. "And I need to beat Vincent at his own game." "How do you beat the mob?" Sarah asked incredulously. "By becoming better at legitimate business than he is at illegitimate business," I said. "The one who sells that incredibly rare Italian Burillo." My heart pounded with determination. The choice was made. I would build my own security brick by clean, honest brick, and replace his dirty money with my own legitimate success. Then, and only then, would I be truly free to face him. The transformation was absolute. Over the next 6 months, I poured every ounce of my energy into Rebecca's kitchen. Sarah let me crash on her couch, and my new business operated entirely through word of mouth, fueled by the disgruntled high-end distributors Vincent had scorned. I specialized in small exclusive events, private parties for lawyers, gallery openings for artists, and corporate dinners for legitimate firms that wanted discretion and unparalleled quality. The local suppliers, the ones Vincent had alienated, loved me. I paid them on time, treated them with respect, and offered them access to the most high-value clientele in the city. They were my support system, my silent partners in the war against Falcone. The business exploded. I was generating revenue that rivaled my old salary at Falcon Enterprises, but every dollar was clean, earned through sheer labor and honest profit margins. I didn't just find a new strength. I discovered I was an empire builder in my own right. I was no longer wearing the black uniform of a waitress or the tailored suits of a Falcon manager. My uniform was clean, sharp, and entirely my own brand. Emma's health was stable. The $60,000 sat untouched in her hospital account, the untouchable leverage I needed. Every cent I earned from Rebecca's kitchen went into a separate clean trust fund for Emma, slowly growing large enough to replace Vincent's tainted money entirely. The confrontation had to be public. It had to be undeniable, and it had to be professional. The perfect opportunity arrived when the mayor of the city, a man known for his extreme caution regarding his reputation, hosted a major campaign celebration. His usual caterer, Falcone's Premier Steakhouse, was unavailable. My newest client, the head of the city's largest legal firm, recommended me. I landed the contract. The event was 500 people. This was the event where the truth would be told. The revelation set up. The celebration was held in the grand ballroom of the oldest hotel downtown. I arrived transformed, not physically, but in presence. My movements were precise. My instructions to my small, tight crew were clear, and my focus was absolute. I was running a massive, perfect operation. The catering staff from Falcone Steakhouse were still working the hotel's regular services. I saw familiar, nervous faces. They knew who I was. They knew I had vanished after challenging Vincent. Their shock at seeing me leading the entire catering operation, serving the mayor and the city's elite, was palpable. The menu was flawless. I used the local distributor's best products, the Barola wine, the heirloom produce, the premium cuts of meat. The aroma alone was intoxicating. Vincent arrived late with Gabriella and a small entourage. He was dressed impeccably, exuding the easy confidence of a man who owned a room. He didn't see me initially. He was greeting the mayor, accepting the usual difference. Then his eyes swept over the massive buffet tables, landing on the banner. Catering provided by Rebecca's Kitchen. His gaze snapped to me. I was standing near the service entrance, reviewing the final dessert presentation. He was stunned. The usual cold mask fractured, replaced by raw, unadulterated shock. He hadn't just expected me to fail. He expected me to disappear. He thought I was broken and homeless. Seeing me standing there, triumphant, successful, and serving the single most legitimate group of people in the city destabilized him entirely. He dismissed his entourage and walked straight toward me, his steps tight and purposeful. "Rebecca," he said, his voice low and dangerous, betraying nothing but controlled anger. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I'm running the catering for the mayor, Vincent," I replied, meeting his gaze evenly. "My business is called Rebecca's Kitchen. Perhaps you've seen our margins." "Your margins?" He gave a short, bitter laugh. "You were destitute 6 months ago. You have no capital, no investors, and no premises. You are running this on a ghost balance sheet. You only see ghost balance sheets because that's all you know how to create." I countered, my voice quiet enough that only he could hear. "My balance sheet is clean. And unlike yours, my profits don't rely on lying to the city comptroller." "You want to talk about lies?" He stepped closer, attempting to trap me emotionally. "You ran out on a contract. You walked away from the security of your daughter's health. That's not success, Rebecca. That's reckless self-sabotage. Did you really think you could survive on your own?" "The truth bomb. I survived because I didn't need your dirty money, Vincent," I declared. "I needed time, and I used that time to build something you can't touch. Something that will expose your operation to the people who matter most." I signaled my new business partner, Mr. Harrison, the formerly alienated wine distributor. Harrison walked over carrying a bottle of the rare Italian Burillo I had used for the main course. "Vincent," I said, "do you recognize Mr. Harrison?" The evidence of his deeper, more dangerous illegality was now exposed. Not just tax evasion, but black market medicine. The entire justification he had given me that he wasn't dealing drugs or killing children was a deliberate, self-serving lie. Vincent's shock was total. He looked at the card, then at me. He had underestimated my meticulous nature. He had planted the clue about the whiskey to distract me from the much darker truth. Just then, Gabriella walked up, her eyes blazing with cold fury. She must have overheard the exchange. "You should have stayed in the kitchen, Rebecca," she hissed. "I should have trusted my gut when I saw your name on the Venture Holdings papers, Gabriella." I shot back, "But that's okay because I brought you a gift, too." I turned slightly. Standing nearby, sipping champagne and listening intently were 2 men, the city controller and the head of the IRS's organized crime division. Both clients of Mr. Harrison and both eating my custom-prepared dessert. "Vincent," I said, my voice ringing with finality. "The mayor's celebration is the most legitimate room in the city, and I am the most legitimate business in this room. My financial records are open. My suppliers are honest. I have replaced your $60,000 in Emma's account with 100% clean funds. Your protection is no longer required." I walked to the table and picked up a clean envelope. Inside is a certified bank check for the principal amount of the original loan. The $4,000 plus the 75% interest paid in full. I will not pay the inflated fees for the seizure of my house, and I will not take a single cent of your blood money. Climax moments, justice served publicly. I didn't need to say anything more. The silence of the room, the watchful eyes of the mayor's associates, and the presence of the financial investigators were enough. The public humiliation of Vincent Falcone was complete. He had been outmaneuvered not by another criminal, but by the efficiency and moral integrity of the waitress he had tried to own. He reached for the wine distributor's card and slowly tore it in half, then dropped the pieces onto the white tablecloth. "You should have let me break you, Rebecca," he said, his voice dangerously low. "A promise of violence." "You tried," I answered, looking him straight in the eye. "But you didn't realize that my daughter's leukemia already showed me what real fear looks like. You are nothing compared to that. I am no longer your victim." Vincent turned and walked away, his exit quiet and devastatingly final. Gabriella followed, pausing only to give me one last look of utter hatred. The witnesses had the evidence. The confrontation was over. My worth was proven. The triumph was mine. The confrontation at the mayor's celebration was not the end of the war, but the absolute victory of the final battle. Vincent Vellini's empire, built on the clean facade of my labor, began to crumble immediately. He thought that desperation was leverage. He was right about the desperation, but he was wrong about the compromise. I didn't become a criminal. I became a better strategist. I learned that the universe doesn't hand out justice, but it does reward effort. And sometimes the best revenge is simply building a life so completely clean and successful that the darkness cannot touch it. Emma is home now. We finally went to the beach. We spent 2 weeks watching the waves, building sandcastles, and eating bad takeout. It was the most beautiful, normal thing I'd ever experienced. Direct audience address. So, that's the story of how I threatened a mafia boss and accidentally ended up building my own empire. It's a story about realizing that sometimes the biggest obstacles in your life are actually disguises for your greatest opportunities. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt trapped, exhausted, or like you had nothing left to lose, then you know exactly the rage and the determination that fueled me. I want to thank all of you for sticking with me through this intense journey. If you enjoyed the ride, please hit the like button, subscribe for more stories of triumph and justice, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than they think. Tell me in the comments what was the moment in your life when you finally stood up and said no more. I hope you're all feeling safe, happy, and strong. Today, this story is over, but the work of finding justice and building a beautiful life never stops. I'm working on another intense story right now about a woman who faked her own death to escape her corrupt husband. You won't want to miss it. Comment yes if you want the. The weeks following the mayor's celebration passed in a blur of vindication and nervous anticipation. My catering business flourished beyond my wildest expectations. Word spread quickly through the city's elite circles about the mayor's successful event, and suddenly Rebecca's Kitchen was the most sought-after catering service for high-profile gatherings. I moved from Sarah's spare room into a modest apartment across town, close enough to Emma's hospital, but far enough from Vincent's territory to feel safe. Emma's recovery continued steadily. The clean money I had earned replaced every cent of Vincent's tainted funds, and for the first time in years, I slept peacefully knowing that our financial security came from honest work. But I should have known that humiliating a man like Vincent Falcone in front of the city's power brokers would come with consequences. The first sign of retaliation came 3 weeks after the mayor's event. I was reviewing supplier contracts in my small office when Sarah called, her voice tight with worry. "Rebecca," she said, "there are men asking questions about you at the hospital. They claim to be from some kind of medical billing audit company, but something feels wrong. They want access to Emma's records, asking about payment sources and treatment history." My blood ran cold. Vincent was trying to find leverage, some way to prove that Emma's care had been funded through illegal means. Even though I had replaced his money with clean funds, he was hoping to create enough suspicion to force an investigation that would disrupt Emma's treatment. I immediately contacted my lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chun who specialized in medical privacy law. She filed injunctions to block any unauthorized access to Emma's records and sent cease and desist letters to Vincent's shell companies. But I knew this was just the beginning. Vincent wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. The next escalation came a week later. I arrived at my commissary kitchen early one morning to find the locks had been tampered with and several expensive pieces of equipment had been subtly damaged. Nothing stolen, nothing obviously broken, just enough sabotage to disrupt my operations and cost me thousands in repairs. The message was clear: Vincent could reach me anywhere. I installed security cameras and hired a night watchman, expenses that cut into my profits but were necessary for protection. Still, I refused to be intimidated. I had built something real and legitimate, and I wouldn't let Vincent destroy it through petty vandalism and intimidation tactics. The third wave of retaliation was more sophisticated and dangerous. I began noticing the same car following me at various times throughout the week. Always different drivers, always maintaining careful distance, but clearly conducting surveillance. They were learning my patterns, my routes, my schedule. I varied my routines and started taking different paths to the hospital and to client meetings. The psychological pressure was intense, but it also strengthened my resolve. Vincent was proving that he was exactly the kind of criminal I had refused to enable. While I was dealing with Vincent's harassment, an unexpected ally emerged from an unlikely source. Detective Maria Santos from the city's organized crime division had been quietly building a case against Vincent for months. The evidence I had gathered during my time working for him, combined with the financial irregularities Mr. Harrison and I had exposed at the mayor's event, provided crucial pieces to her investigation. Detective Santos approached me discreetly at a coffee shop downtown, her badge hidden, but her authority unmistakable. "Ms. Hayes," she said, "I understand you've had business dealings with Vincent Falcone. We're preparing a case against his organization, and your testimony could be invaluable. But I need you to understand the risks involved." I explained my situation, the threats, the surveillance, the attempts to discredit my daughter's medical care. Detective Santos listened intently, taking notes and asking pointed questions about Vincent's business operations, his associates, and the money laundering schemes I had uncovered. "The truth is, Ms. Hayes," she said finally, "Vincent Falcone has been operating with impunity for years because people are too afraid to testify against him. But you've already stood up to him once, and you've built legitimate success despite his attempts to control you. Your testimony could be the key to shutting down his entire operation." I knew that cooperating with the investigation would paint an even larger target on my back, but I also realized that this was my chance to ensure that Vincent could never threaten Emma or me again. If he was in federal prison, his reach would be severely limited, and I could finally build our life without looking over my shoulder. I agreed to cooperate, but only with strict protections for Emma's safety and my business operations. Detective Santos arranged for discreet protection and worked with federal prosecutors to ensure that my cooperation would be kept confidential until the moment of Vincent's arrest. The investigation moved forward over the next several months. I provided detailed information about Vincent's restaurant operations, the money laundering through supply contracts, the illegal importation schemes I had discovered, and the network of shell companies used to hide criminal proceeds. My business continued to thrive, even as I lived under the constant stress of knowing that my former employer was likely planning more serious retaliation. The breakthrough came when federal agents raided Vincent's restaurants and warehouses simultaneously, seizing financial records, computer files, and physical evidence of his criminal enterprise. The raids were coordinated to prevent Vincent from destroying evidence or fleeing the jurisdiction. I watched the news coverage from my apartment, Emma curled up beside me, as we saw footage of federal agents carrying boxes of evidence from the same trattoria where I had once worked as Vincent's manager. Vincent was arrested at his home the following morning, along with Gabriella and several other key members of his organization. The federal indictment included charges of money laundering, tax evasion, racketeering, and conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. The illegal medical supply operation I had helped expose was a central element of the prosecution's case. The trial preparation phase was intense and nerve-wracking. I spent hours with federal prosecutors, reviewing evidence and preparing for my testimony. They explained that Vincent's defense team would likely try to discredit me as a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge, but the documentary evidence I had helped gather was too substantial to dismiss. During this time, my catering business reached new heights of success. The publicity surrounding Vincent's arrest, while not directly naming me, created a narrative about honest business owners standing up to organized crime. My client base expanded to include corporate events, political fundraisers, and high society weddings. I hired additional staff and moved into a larger commercial kitchen space. Emma's health continued to improve dramatically. Her oncologist was amazed by her progress, and we began discussing her eventual return to normal childhood activities. For the first time since her diagnosis, we started planning for a future that didn't revolve around hospital stays and medical treatments. The trial began on a cold January morning. The federal courthouse was surrounded by media attention, and I entered through a side entrance to avoid the cameras. Vincent looked different in his orange jumpsuit, smaller somehow, stripped of the expensive suits and aura of power that had once made him so intimidating. When I took the witness stand, I looked directly at Vincent as I recounted the story of my employment with his organization. I testified about the money laundering schemes, the illegal supply operations, the predatory loan practices, and the systematic criminal activity that had been hidden behind the facade of legitimate restaurants. Vincent's lawyer attempted to portray me as an opportunistic employee who had stolen trade secrets and violated her employment contract for personal gain. But the evidence was overwhelming, and my testimony was corroborated by financial records, surveillance footage, and the testimony of other witnesses who had finally found the courage to speak out. The most powerful moment of my testimony came when the prosecutor asked me to explain why I had chosen to risk everything by exposing Vincent's crimes. I looked out at the courtroom, saw Emma sitting in the gallery with Sarah, and spoke from the heart. I testified that no parent should have to choose between their child's health and their moral integrity, that no person should be trapped in criminal activity through desperation and manipulation, and that legitimate businesses deserve protection from criminal enterprises that used intimidation and violence to control honest people. Vincent was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. His criminal organization was dismantled, his assets were seized, and his associates either fled the jurisdiction or accepted plea bargains in exchange for cooperation. The day of his sentencing, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I had been carrying. As I left the courthouse, Detective Santos approached me one final time. "You should be proud, Ms. Hayes," she said. "Your courage didn't just protect your daughter and build your business. It helped shut down a criminal enterprise that was hurting this entire community." In the months that followed Vincent's imprisonment, my life transformed in ways I had never imagined possible. Rebecca's Kitchen became one of the premier catering companies in the city, known not just for exceptional food, but for ethical business practices and community involvement. I established a scholarship fund for children of single parents facing medical crises, using a portion of my profits to help families avoid the desperate choices I had once faced. Emma made a full recovery and returned to school with the resilience and strength that comes from surviving something most children never have to endure. She spoke about wanting to become a doctor someday, inspired by the medical professionals who had saved her life. We finally took that trip to the beach she had dreamed about during her darkest days in the hospital. We spent a week building sandcastles, collecting shells, and watching the sunset over the ocean. It was the most peaceful, beautiful time of my life, made even more precious by the knowledge that we had earned it through honest work and moral courage. Sometimes Emma asks me about the time when she was sick and we had no money. I tell her that those were the days when I learned that the most important thing in life isn't avoiding hardship, but choosing how you respond to it. I learned that desperation can either break you or reveal strength you never knew you possessed. Years later, when business magazines write profiles about successful entrepreneurs who overcame impossible odds, they often ask me for the secret to building a thriving company from nothing. I always give them the same answer. There is no substitute for honest work, moral courage, and the determination to protect what you love. Vincent Falcone thought he could own me because he controlled my desperation. But desperation, when channeled correctly, becomes determination. And determination, when combined with integrity, becomes unstoppable. Today, Rebecca's Kitchen employs over 30 people, serves clients throughout the region, and has become a model for how small businesses can compete with larger corporations through superior service and ethical practices. Emma is healthy, happy, and planning for college. I own my home, have financial security, and sleep peacefully every night knowing that everything I've built comes from clean, honest work. But perhaps most importantly, I've learned that the greatest victory isn't just surviving hardship or achieving success. The greatest victory is maintaining your integrity while building a life so completely legitimate and successful that the darkness of your past can never reach you again. Vincent Falcone tried to make me complicit in his criminal world, but instead he taught me that there is no substitute for moral courage, and that the most powerful form of revenge is living a life so honest and successful that your former oppressor becomes irrelevant. That's the story of how a single mother, a waitress pushed beyond her limits, faced down a mafia boss, and built an empire on the foundation of integrity and determination. It's a story about choosing courage over comfort, principles over profit, and the long-term satisfaction of honest success over the short-term temptation of easy money. If you've ever felt trapped, exhausted, or like you had nothing left to lose, remember this. Your lowest moment might actually be the doorway to your greatest triumph. Sometimes the biggest obstacles in your life are actually disguised opportunities to discover strength, courage, and integrity you never knew you possessed. The work of building a beautiful, honest life never stops, but neither does the satisfaction that comes from knowing that everything you've achieved belongs to you because you earned it the right way. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember that you're stronger than you think, braver than you feel, and capable of building something beautiful even from the darkest circumstances. The choice is always yours.